I'm outside of the city of Corinth, right at the top of Peloponnesian Peninsula in Greece. And behind me are the ruins of one of the two ports of ancient Corinth. Corinth was a very unique city-state in that it had two ports, one on the Corinthian Gulf that served boat traffic coming in from the west, and then one on the eastern side of the Peloponnese, which is behind me now, that served traffic coming from the east. This one here was called Kenchreai, or Kenchreai in English, and the other port on the west is to the west is called Lecheon. So Corinth became a very wealthy city, a rival of Athens, in fact, in the classical period. And in about 400 BC, the population of the city of Corinth was close to 100,000 people. But the reason that I'm here is to show you these stones that are behind me. And this has nothing to do with classical Corinth. It has nothing to do with the classical times, but rather with biblical times, and that is the 1st century AD. By the 1st century AD, Corinth was a Roman, part of the Roman Empire, as was all of what today is Greece. And it was here in about 50 AD that the Apostle Paul arrived. He came here and he spent about a year and a half, quite a long time, in the city of Corinth. But this was the port that he arrived at, the port of Kenchreai. And later on, in about the 4th century AD, there was a basilica, an early Christian basilica built, which these are the stones you can see behind me, and they extend into the sea. In fact, you can walk on them, you can swim around them in the sea, which I think is very unique. This port area that's all behind me here was a very busy Roman port. So from about the mid 2nd century BC up until the 3rd, 4th century AD, this was a very busy Roman port. But it's important for people who come to visit Greece on religious travel, on religious tours, because this was where the Apostle Paul stepped foot on the Greek mainland, and he walked from here to Corinth. Corinth is not very far. It's probably, I don't know, maybe about 10 miles, maybe even less from here. So he would have walked from this port to the city of Corinth, where he stayed, and then he departed again from this port again of Kenchreai when he left Corinth and went to Ephesus. He's well known for his epistles, and two of them he wrote while he was here in Corinth, so or from his time in Corinth, the Corinthians, and then of course when he left here he went to Ephesus, and then there is the epistle to the Ephesians. So a very important archaeological site, and I think we'll go and walk a little bit on the stones. There was also a more ancient temple dedicated to Isis here. Corinth and the port of Corinth had, it was a very open-minded area in the Roman times, and so there were temples dedicated to many different gods and many different religions. So Christianity was just one of several different religions that were represented here. But the stones that you see behind us were in fact part of that basilica that was erected and dedicated to the Apostle Paul in the 4th century AD. Today you can see down here there's a little beach, people swimming, and around the other side there's another longer beach. So it's really just a sort of a part of the landscape, and people come and swim around the stones and really think nothing of it, but it's such an important site that a lot of people don't realize that they're swimming around. So we're going to go for a walk sort of out here to see the remains of this 4th century basilica that was dedicated to the Apostle Paul. As I said, there was also a temple dedicated to Isis in this area too. And the stones, now the sea level has risen and sort of taken over the basilica, or the remains of the basilica, but you can clearly see the stones underwater here. And when the water's not quite so choppy, you can walk out and onto the stones. They're just kind of lying around here in the sea. There are people swimming in the distance there. Over there, there are the remains of the breakwater. There were 2 breakwaters that sort of enclosed the port, one over in that area, and the other one began out past where this basilica is. They predated, of course, the basilica, the breakwater, and they created an opening to the harbor just about out there. So out there, we're looking towards the east. We're looking towards Athens. We're looking towards the Aegean Sea. And nowadays, the modern city of Corinth is behind this ridge here. And the ancient city of Corinth is back in that area there. So the Apostle Paul would have disembarked here at the port. Of course, this basilica came after his arrival by several hundred years. So there was a port right here. He would have disembarked. He would have walked across this area here and then followed the road that even today is called the Apostle Paul Road. And that road led straight into the heart of the ancient city of Corinth. So history always around you, everywhere you are in Greece, even when you come to the beach. In some places, you can walk on these ancient stones. And let's see if we can go kind of walking. You can see that the water has taken over. I always wonder when I look down here and I see all of these terracotta pieces, if in fact they were maybe part of ancient pottery, because the Corinthians were renowned for their pottery. That was one of the sources of their wealth, as were the 2 ports, because they controlled the passage from east to west and also from north to south. So anybody coming from the north, from Athens, going to the Peloponnese, going down to Sparta, had to come through this area. And additionally, the Corinthians also were the ones who hosted the Isthmian Games, because there is the Isthmus of Corinth, which we'll visit tomorrow, sort of up beyond this ridge. And I'll talk about that in a different video. So these are the stones of this basilica, the foundations of which are underwater nowadays.